of the Pearland Independent School District Board of Trustees to order on February 11th at 5:04 p.m. And this is a workshop, so all members are present except for Mr. Murphy, but he is on his way.
President, members of the board, we have a short presentation. Feel free to just interject as we present.
Very good. Okay.
I'll give it to you from this point.
Good evening, board. I thought we'd first, this is the very last slide of the presentation, but I'm just going to give a quick overview of this. I think it will help as we give a presentation. You'll know where we're going. Essentially, we have about $13.6 million that we're projecting that will be excess funds. We are very close to the pricing on the very last project, the elementaries. And we've put together a list of projects in the district, and that total is $22.6 million. And you can see those projects. Now, we're going to provide a presentation that explains all this information. So first off, we'll give you a budget update. Then we'll talk to you how we identified all the projects that were on that list. You'll see those projects. And then the workshop can start, and you can provide action on how we're going to proceed. Posh is going to talk to you about the present budget that we are looking at.
So this is a one-page budget overview, that the same thing you've been seeing. And so the bottom right corner where it says 13,633, that is what we're projecting as an underrun. So as Don said, everything's been bid with the exception of package E. You can see where projecting will be right on budget. That is where our 50% construction document estimate has come back at. So it came back right on budget. We were glad to see that. We'll be bringing you the GMP for that in March, and we're actually getting the bids in next week. So we will have confirmation on that. But right now, we're just projecting he's going to be at budget. And the only other thing is the bond scope press box. We're carrying the budget number for that. That has not been bid yet. We bid the expanded version, and then that's on hold. So the press box and package E are the only two that have not been bid. We're confident we can do both of those. So we're quite confident in that 13.6 million.
So here is the methodology that we use to put together the projects. We went back and looked at the 2014 facility assessment to see if there were any needs there. We worked with Mr. Berger to identify all the maintenance priorities. We had a security committee that met several times, and you'll see some of the projects that they are recommending. And then we also asked every principal in the district, do you have any needs at your campuses? And we have that list. And then the rig projects, the expanded press box and the facade, you'll hear more about that.
Okay, so just to run through that list, from talking with Larry in maintenance, we looked at really the two big areas where we have backlogs and high priorities are roofs and HVAC equipment. So on the roofs, maintenance has given us their prioritized list, and we just said let's take the top three, which total at 5.3 million. So stop there. There's more, but those are the highest three priorities. Lawn being the most. Next thing we put on the list is the HVAC equipment. So right now, this is what I would call the backlog. This is a list of 17 projects, chillers, boilers, pumps, major equipment that right now is at the end of its useful life. So it's either near failure, will need replacement, and or needing replacement or major repairs very soon. So this is what I call their current backlog. There's more that's going to come, I believe, at the March board meeting for maintenance with their multi-year plan. This right now represents what the most urgent. And this is just a list of that. You can see 4.6 plus at the bottom. So that's 17 projects prioritized.
Go back to that real quick.
You said this is prioritized by need?
Yes.
You just included a roof as an alternate to a project. Which roof was that?
Lawn roof is
That was-
is an alternate in
Okay.
the package E. Now,
Okay.
right now in that budget, in the first estimate that we have, it's not included in there. It's like $1 million. Unless the GMP comes in $1 million less than we expected, not going to be able to fit that in package E. We would likely deliver that with package E, do it at the same time, but just fund it from these excess funds.
Berger, how old is like Massey, was it Massey Ranch? So, a couple of these schools built at the same time?
Massey Ranch roof, sir?
No, the school itself. Like where, I don't know how many years.
2006 was Massey Ranch.
It was built? Like, was Silvercrest is a newer school, is that correct, or is that? How, do we have the dates on that?
Silvercrest was 1999.
So what would have happened, say, to this HVAC equipment had we not been considering it within bond scope? How would we prioritize these efforts, and where would those funds typically come from?
Well, for those 17, if we didn't hit the bond scope, we would see which one ultimately would fail to where we couldn't continue to render aid with the budget that we have, and we would come to the mercy of Ms. Carter and say, this chiller or this drive or this motor has failed, we can no longer resuscitate it or bring it to life, we need to replace it. We don't have the funds in our operating budget, so then we come to the business office and say, we need this much money, and then they come to you.
What's your operating budget?
This year, the operating budget, without the RMP is 1.8 million. With the RMP, we have a total budget of $2,048,000.
And RMP is,
It's what the district gives us for HVAC, for field maintenance, for larger budget items that we know we struggle to make happen on our operating budget.
But your total maintenance.
Our total maintenance budget is $2,048,000.
so you get $500,000 RMP roughly?
Yes, sir.
So that's discretionary to spend on emergency type projects and things of that sort?
Yes, sir.
I got you.
Can you tell me the difference between the replacement cost and the cumulative cost categories there?
Yes, that's just the cumulative is a running total.
Ah, I
So if
gotcha.
you stop at
I
number
see.
7, Rogers, that's
if you did
1 through 7 is 2.4
Yeah.
million.
Notice I'm not a math major here.
Let me clarify that. It's R and P or R?
They call it RP budget. It's just
RP
something
budget,
that they
okay.
call it RP budget.
Okay, you said your main budget was 1.2 and your
1.8.
excuse me, your 1.8, and with RMP
With
we go
RMP,
to
it's
basically
2,048,000.
2 million. So you have 200,000
Yes, sir.
of RMP,
200,000.
not half a million. Yeah, okay, 200,000. Okay,
Compared to last year's budget, we're short 459,000 based on budget cuts.
459,000. Okay.
So given that these were, I mean, this has only been about 2-3 years ago that we talked about bond, and these are at lifespan years of 15 to 20 years. Were these included, and again, forgive my ignorance here, I wasn't on the board when we talked about bond scope projects. These were not identified as a need in the bond?
Some of them, many of them were identified in either the 2010 or 2014 facility assessment, but they weren't included in the bond packages that was approved.
Can somebody explain to me where that cut happens?
In the 2014, it identified priorities 1 through 4, and part of the coming up with the final bond scope was let's do priorities 1 and 2. So some of these were likely in 3 and 4 priorities, but they just didn't make the cut for that bond.
I have a similar question about the Searcy roof, for example. I mean, we knew we were doing the renovations across the board at PHS, but that didn't get looped into the bond scope. Question mark.
Yeah.
You know, again, a lot of this planning was almost 4 years ago, 2016, 2014 bond, so a lot of the planning and identification of all the projects,
But, and some of this was found out, it looks like in 2014 on the facility assessment though, correct? Or I'm missing the gap there.
The Cersei roof on the 2014 facility assessment was a 3.
Okay.
We stopped
How would we?
at priority 2 on the bond.
So those priorities, like priority 1 said,
That was life safety.
you need to do it
Right.
kind of like now.
Right,
Priority
right, right.
2 was do it, in 1 to 4 years. Priority 3 was it's something you could look at in 5 to 8 years, and then a priority 4 was beyond that.
Even though our bond is over a 10-year period, that makes no sense to me. I mean, specifically roofs, right? So roofing, you have a 10-year life cycle on a bond. We were 2 years prior to the bond during the 2014 assessment. So let's just call it 12 years. And the life cycle of a typical roof is 20 years. So 8-year gap that we have to budget for a new roof for a particular facility.
Well, but I would argue, and you've made this argument before, Jeff, that normally you don't want to be paying for those expected maintenance costs out of bond projects. You'd love to see them come out of M&O, and it's just that M&O has tightened up over the last 2 or 3 years, and money's just not been there.
No, I completely understand. I agree with you. And there's certain things that I would love to eliminate from M&O. From bond funds. IT is one of them.
Yep.
No, no offense taken, I hope. And then, typical maintenance items like HVAC, roofing, with our 10-year capital improvement plan that we have in place. I don't know why we didn't see that.
One thing that hasn't been mentioned here on roofs is that in this package E, 3 of those projects have roof replacements. So 3 of the elementaries that we're going to be doing in package E, the bond did include roof replacements. But it was
Which
incorporated
campuses?
into those projects.
Challenger, Rustic, and CJ.
Okay, because they're,
They were all
that,
1 and 2s.
yeah, they were all 1 and 2s. So it's just the 3 and the 4s.
What
that
is
didn't-
Lahan right now? Do you know
Lahan,
what Lahan was, or the other 3 were?
my record show, Long was a 2, Cersei was a 3, and Sav on your list.
Yeah.
So what's changed since
So,
then?
or what are they now?
We haven't done it. For me, Lawn is 1.
Well-
Lawn currently has a failure issue. Lawn is the worst roof in our district.
Worse than the ones that are in package E?
So the first 5 that we had talked about, Larry, were Lawn, Sab, Cersei, and then Turner/South, and it's,
Yes, sir.
those are the top 5 priorities.
Yes, sir.
And so while we're doing package E, we, called for 3 of them that were shortly after those on the priority list to be incorporated.
Or the ones, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
But no matter what, lawn has to be taken care of, Mr. Berger, correct? Right. Whether you can get it wrapped into that Project E or not.
Right. It's being bid as an alternate to package E if we can fit.
So I think that one of my concerns is that, I obviously don't argue with any of the projects that are listed here on the HVAC, right? And I think Mr. Posh, Mr. Tillis, you mentioned that there are projects behind these. And I know we've been talking about a 5-year, 10-year CIP and kind of understanding what that backlog is. And I think, Dr. Kelly, you're saying that we have that or we don't have it?
Well, we've had it in different pieces, but as
Okay.
Jeff pointed out, it's all one package, technology plus maintenance plus other things. And
Yeah.
so I've asked Georgiani in her office to put all that together so that you can use that as you budget plan for the next year.
Right. Now, we're likely not going to be able to, who knows what we're going to be able to handle on this type of thing out of our M&O budget.
Right.
Who knows? But to understand the entire scope of what we're looking at over a period of years is what we're looking at. So that document should show, hey, we've got a chiller at Carlston that's 3 years away from being, replaced. So in year X plus 3, this needs to be on your list. So we can understand what you're looking at and understand what we are putting off, or what your backlog is, right? And it is just it's a challenge to see that we've got 6 RTUs at Carlston, and we did 10 million out there, and we put we put 10 million out at lawn, and we're now coming back to replace the roof,
Well, and in full disclosure, in the lawn bond, the
Right.
roof was initially in the lawn bond.
Okay.
It was valued engineered out.
Is that
What
right?
does that mean?
What does that mean?
That means that somebody looked at it and said, we don't need to do it right now.
Yeah.
That's basically what that means. So
Over budget.
it was,
So that was a way to get back into budget, I assume.
That decision was made before I came in.
the pre-LB days. All right. So that value engineering wasn't brought to the board, right? The final GMP was brought to the board, but was that decision on taking that roof out of that package brought to the board? I think
those were decisions.
that were made at the staff
5
level.
years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Was it brought to us?
No, it wasn't.
Part of that 10 million.
Right.
Was reduced down again.
Right. We did bid it back
This is
then.
the second time we bid that roof.
Some of that money was diverted for some HVAC equipment
Okay.
At lawn.
at lawn.
Okay.
Lawn was kind of complicated because we had a large addition,
Right.
and then there was some of the roof was in really bad shape, and we couldn't get the warranties and so on and so forth. And so some of the money got diverted over to Carlson to do some HVAC. Kind of, which do
Okay.
you do?
And then the gymnasiums were in a separate package, right? Because the gymnasium and the cafeteria at Lawn were both expanded, right? And that was in a separate package.
That's this.
That's this pack. That's what we,
That's this
well, yeah,
package.
it was in a separate package from the
That's in package.
expansion. Yeah, so it was a separate package. Okay,
That roof is part of that
okay,
now.
okay. So it sounds like there were some significant changes to the projects, right? That, and unless I missed it, that wasn't brought to the board, so that was a staff level decision, right? Okay, so wasn't aware that wasn't aware that went down. Okay,
Talking about the old bond or the new bond?
It would have to be the old one.
old bond, but it still refers to, I'm just still referring to the project, just to lawn. Okay, and so we were trying to fit that into the budget for the old bond funds that we had, didn't have the new bond funds yet. Okay.
I would have thought that would have been rolled over, right? So if we have a new bond coming out, it's like, oh, these are the ones we didn't do in the old
Right.
bond. Let's
Right.
add these to the list.
Yeah. So anyway, my thing is that we've got to get a complete look at, this type of stuff, right? And then I think there is a Pearland, right? Number one, with these chillers, and we did. What was the Pearland ISD? What was the Pearland High School
Like 30 million,
bond? It was like, yeah,
wasn't it?
20, 30 million.
Previous bond.
Yep.
Right. Okay.
But
Previous
we did a lot
bond,
of-
but we still
We
had the
did a lot of
same.
HVAC stuff, didn't we?
Yeah.
Right, we did the Pearland side,
Mm-hmm.
But not the,
central plant, not the Cersei.
not the CERTC.
Okay.
Like the Pearland side,
Right.
replaced the Pearland central plant, not the Cersei.
Right. Okay.
So in that bond, if you remember, we did have excess money,
Mhm.
and the Cersei chill tower needed repair.
Right.
So you approved us to use
That
that
one's
excess
there.
money to replace that chill tower.
Okay.
Now we have the roof chillers that we are rebuilding in-house, but
So of this list here, if we're looking at it sort of like the roof list, where's the cut for like, gosh, this needs to happen and these are a problem, but they're not presenting daily issues for us kind of thing?
$11.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, everything on here is a replacement need, but if you're saying, we're having issues.
So replacement need based on time and usage, replacement time based on amount of maintenance we've done out there, or?
The life of the equipment has reached a point to where we are spending money on, we're throwing good money after bad.
Mhm.
We're just patching and repairing, to where over time, we're gonna
all of these are that way.
And I would, I guess, I don't know if this is a question or more than a comment, but I would echo Crystal's sentiment. If this was rolled over and I wasn't here during that bond, or I was here at the end of that bond and it was a priority that was taking out, I guess why didn't it get put into this bond as a priority? And again, that's neither, it could be a comment or a question, but it seems that if it was a priority that got pulled out of a previous bond, then it would have got put in this bond.
About the lawn roof?
Talking about the Lawhon roof.
I would say that the Lawhon roof was an issue of, that bond was going on when this bond was being created, and I don't think that the Lawhon original bond communicated to the new bond that, hey, we pulled the roof out. I don't think that, to be fair, I don't think that ever was communicated up to the new bond, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I mean, would that be you're saying at a school level, or, I mean,
Yes, I'm saying it is school level.
I don't, okay, so
Well, then-
remember at the end of the old bond, remember we had that whole conversation about moving money around, the 5 million and stuff. I never heard anything about projects that's still yet to be completed for the 2006 bond, right? I don't recall that conversation ever.
No, and like I said, we didn't have a conversation on what was pulled out, value engineered out, and that either. So that's, I think what you're seeing is a whole lot of, this is new,
well, and I guess, Dr. Kelly, did we have the gentleman who retired was where Larry is now, didn't he oversee was there?
I just can't
Cross.
remember, but, I'm trying to remember even just the sequence here. We decided that we would take the old bond with its, whatever amount was still left in it,
30-some million. Yeah.
and said, let's spend it on these three things, identified those major projects, and if I remember right, that's before we went forward with the facilities study to build the 2016 bond. So what got in and I just can't remember all that.
What year
All
was the
those
bond
steps.
prior to 2016?
2010, 2006?
So is this the way we go about, I mean, is this this is my naivety and kind of going back to Jeff's point about the comprehensive plan, is this the way typically the projects work when you have failure at schools or these HVAC equipment? I mean, it doesn't seem like our M&O is carrying that. And what happens is that
Yeah.
unique to our district, or is that an M&O issue across
I don't
districts?
think
Or
it's unique, but I think this is the 8th year I've been here. In the first few years, we really, I think, had a fairly good ability to pay for things out of M&O. We weren't really coming to the board and saying either take it out of fund balance or we need a bond. But I think finances have tightened up over the last 3 or 4 years, and we've become more dependent on the bond to do things with the M&O not available. Now, I also should introduce into this that because we have maintained a fairly good fund balance, a lot of these projects are essentially, I guess you'd call them one-time costs as opposed to recurring. So there may be a time, and I may have done this in the past, I don't remember off the top of my head, but either in the past or now, where we would come forward and say, let's take this out of fund balance, not necessarily the bond, or waiting, because it's a one-time expenditure, and we don't, we're not doing it with salary or anything like that. So,
Mr. Berger, may I ask you a couple more questions about your budget? That 1.8, does that include, what does that include? Is that your salaries, is that your people, overtime? None of that?
No HR cost out of that.
Okay,
That's
no
all
overtime, that's all operating,
Yes, sir.
right? So that's money you're spending on stuff,
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, and so then you said you're
Supplies.
459K lower with your RMP with the
We did
budget cuts.
this year.
Okay, okay,
Based on the projected deficit.
yeah, and that's a chiller, almost.
What, the budget cut?
Yeah, the budget
Yeah.
cut, or almost two chillers.
Or
yeah.
two of them.
Yeah,
Also, in the history of the M&O budget,
right,
it doesn't necessarily come before the board.
Right.
What we do is we write a special request or a budget increase, and it goes to Ms. Carter, before that, Mr. Marshall.
Right.
That when we hit about March, April, we realize we're not gonna have enough money to make the year. So we ask for a fund increase of a certain amount when we want to get through the year. And for every year that I can recall historically, M&O has asked for that from the CIO.
okay,
That we need a basically to make it through.
To make it through, okay. But you never were, and when I'm saying capital costs, I mean big time replacements of like stuff like this. That never has come out of that budget, right? So that's not what it's for. Okay. You know,
Like, you'll go
Complete
back to
that
the
for me
Barrett
because
Miller
I'm
chiller,
missing.
right.
You guys approved that.
Right,
expenditure.
right, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So complete that thought for me. Like, where are you going with that? That I'm missing how it plugs in.
What I'm saying is that our maintenance and operations budget is insufficient to handle major capital repair.
And you would
And
call
that's where I
these
was-
major capital repair.
I would, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
But it hasn't always been that way. Not
but
even
it's
since I've been on
just
the board.
Tightened up with
Yeah.
each succeeding year.
It's pretty common, most of the districts are having the same problem in their M&Os. Dr. Kelly's, explained it,
Right.
really getting their budget cuts, and that appears to be a place they start with their M&O budget.
Get into, we'll replace it when it breaks, which isn't always the best way to do things.
What about forecasting? Have we done any forecasting in the past on, I'm just trying to
Well, I
wrap my
think-
head around the fact that we've
Jeff,
got hundreds of millions of dollars here that we've spent over the last several years.
I think, the facility study, and I think we've done 2 of them since I've been here, does this thing, this process described earlier where there's a prioritization made of 1 through 4, but life has a way of changing those priorities, and a roof that you thought, well, okay, that'll be good for another 10 years, turns out to need replacement within a year. So I think some of this, the priorities have just changed. I haven't kept track of all that in my head, but I think that's why some things have risen to the top that we didn't think were a big deal a couple of years ago.
And so 34 RTUs here at this building. And this building was built within the last 10 years, right?
What's an RTU?
Return air unit? Like
Oh,
a big,
okay.
air conditioned
This
rooftop,
is the
rooftop
old
unit,
ESC.
sorry.
This is the old ESC.
Old ESC.
That's the property over there in
No,
Galveston.
I'm talking about number 8.
Oh,
Item
I'm
8,
sorry.
right. Right, item 8. And so I guess when we came in, were those, I know this building wasn't new construction, but was that's just leftover equipment
Those
from,
are existing units.
those are Walmart's,
Yeah, those are
basically?
Walmart.
Okay,
Our record shows that this building was built in 1982.
okay. And so then you
Walmart.
got, okay.
There were some, but not very many.
Okay. Okay. I mean, we can continue to pepper this list, but I understand how we got here, but my request is that, Mr. Berger, I know you know what else is not even on this list, and, what your backlog or what your deferred maintenance is, and we want to know that as well. And
Ms. Carter has
Right.
charged us to come up with the,
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
been asked for repeatedly.
Yeah.
So we are looking at that, so some of the forecasting, and it's a lot more
Okay.
detailed than this.
Okay.
We've kind of projected out to 2025
Okay.
and what the capital amount would be. And then if you do these bond projects, what would be left over?
Right.
And then if we were to remove like vehicles and equipment, what is truly roofs, chillers, HVAC? And so we've kind of forecasted that
Okay.
for the next 5 years based on Ms. Carter's request. And we're
Okay.
supposed to have a workshop where we sit down and discuss all this and then present it to you guys.
Right.
In March.
For all the departments.
Yeah, and I think that's my major pain point, if you will, with this. So just understanding what's coming. So
Come back to that list later if
Sure.
you'd like. Have a safety to security committee that met, and they came up with some recommendations. Also, there's a fire alarm system at Pearland High School and Turner Junior High South that needs to be replaced. Just quickly, review what was in the 2016 bond, the access control. We've got about 80% of that implemented. Security vestibules, but we still lack Junior High East, West, Shady Crest, and Pearland High School. Security cameras, we're about 90% finished, and then we're finished with the elementaries and middle school fencing. These are the 3 projects that the committee is recommending. Classroom hardware, right now, in each one of our classrooms, if you want to, you have to go outside into the corridor to lock the door. supposed to lock their door, but sometimes that doesn't happen. There's a magnetic strip that goes there where people can go in and out. You could have a substitute. And so what we're proposing is hardware like this, where you can see, is the door open or is it locked from inside? So every classroom would take hardware like this. Teacher can look and see if the door's locked or it's, or unlocked. Right now, they're not, they could be not sure. So one of the major things, if we were to have a situation, is getting kids into a classroom behind a locked door. That's one of the number one things.
You know, when the police trained us over there at PHS with the active shooter thing a couple weeks ago or whenever that was, they were pointing out this is just about the most important thing, because they were basically saying in all the history of the active shooters, if you come to a door that's locked and difficult to go through, you're not going to go in there. You're going to go on to something easier to get into. So it does strike me as a very useful and high priority item.
Do you have a cost associated with the changing all the?
But that's estimate is 1.4 million for the classroom hardware.
For every single classroom door,
That's 2,000 doors.
1.4 mil.
Sorry,
Second
say the number
project.
again, please. You said how much was it?
1.4 million.
Second project is security film on, we have a lot of glass on the exterior of our schools. So this would put that security film on all those areas where you just can't walk through the glass and come into the school, part of the hardening of the school. The third project is.
Can you talk about cost for that as well?
That's
Sorry
estimate
to
for
interrupt.
that is 600,000.
What does that cover?
You're tinting the windows, is that what you're saying?
It's the
Like a film.
security film on the
Like a-
glass.
Like a tempering, but you
On
just
which
lay it on the
glass?
outside or whatnot, so it doesn't
So
shatter
this
or
is-
something?
I mean, does that include, for instance, Dawson? Are you security glassing the third floor? I
No,
mean, or is
sir.
it just
It's everything
first
up to
floor of
8.
every school, or?
It's ground up to 8 feet. So, and it is basically full height windows up to 8 feet, where somebody is likely to break through it or shoot through it and just walk in. It is not, and so that is for all that glass in the district. Does not include punched openings like for classrooms that you'd have to climb through. It's just break and walk into the school.
In preparation for today's meeting, I called a few friends that are police officers in district, and they prioritized these top two. Sandy Hook, apparently, the guy went through a window, and so this has been a big selling point for this particular glass shield. And he made the comment, this is going to make it more difficult once PD gets there to enter the building, but that they understand that and still feel like it's a priority for our schools, given how much it does benefit the students and the safety inside.
So just to clarify, you're saying like your typical classroom, if they have a window, it's elevated maybe 4 feet off the ground, that would not be included.
And that's correct.
It's only the exterior of the.
So say hypothetically say Dawson, right? I mean, I don't know any full glass from the floor to the top anywhere at that campus.
There may not be, but it's wherever the other schools that we have that glass.
What?
A lot of the exterior doors, I'm pretty sure at Dawson, the exterior doors have two large glass lights in it. We're doing those doors also. It's not necessarily a full glass door, but it's a typical door that has, mostly glass.
Well, my concern obviously would be if someone can jump 3 feet after smashing a classroom window, they're in the school.
That is true. It's just a matter of where do you stop? So
Yeah.
that's where we stop. Could
Yeah.
certainly do more. We figured we'd cover the windows that had the highest, vulnerability.
I got confused between what. Did you mention that you were doing the glass from the ground to 8 foot
Yes.
up? Okay, so Mike, you asked
Has to
about
be like
yeah,
a whole
just a
8-foot
door.
section, or
It's wherever the most, we said 8 feet, wherever the most logical stopping point is.
Okay,
So
ground to
if we
8
have
feet,
a
okay.
window that starts at 3 feet, we wouldn't cover the first 5 feet of it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so we're covering round to 8 feet, but for full height glass.
Or full height glass?
Right, we're not doing what we call punched opening.
So you're not doing, okay, and a punched out window is, you know,
When I say punched openings, that's architectural term for
Yeah.
just a square opening, not the full height.
okay, okay.
So if a window is 4 feet off the ground, from the ground level, it has a brick facade.
It would not be
And then
included.
above that would be to 8 feet, say, that 4-foot span above the 4-foot brick would be covered.
No,
It
No.
would not be.
Oh.
Only
That doesn't make
glass that
sense.
starts at the ground.
only glass that
Only,
starts.
okay, I didn't catch that point. Only
Only
glass
t-
that starts at the ground. Okay, okay.
And that's just mainly doors, that double pane doors.
Doors and exterior windows, like I think Alexander has, a lot of glass. We're only doing,
Right.
where
There's
there's
nothing but
curtain wall or window wall,
Nothing but
Okay.
we're doing that also.
You know, and again, this was one of those where do you stop, you know, so.
Right.
um,
Right. And so,
Trying to hit the highest priorities.
and so,
And really, no one's gonna know, you know, be able to look at it and tell.
Hmm.
So, not clear that, oh, you know,
Go through that window.
go through that one, right, so.
right. And when I think about that, I'm almost completely thinking somebody shooting through the window, right? And so, is it a bullet resistant film?
In a way, yes. You could shoot a bullet through it, but the bullet will just make a hole like that, so you still can't, regular glass, if you shoot through it, it shatters everything. So we're trying to just prevent the eventuality of somebody shooting or smashing through the glass and walking in. Making it very difficult for somebody to get in.
So it's classified as bullet resistant, not bulletproof, or is it even is stopping
No,
bullets?
Shatterproof.
even-
Still go through, it's
We just,
shatterproof.
we
It's
just
sh-
call
okay,
it
it's holding
security.
the glass.
Not
is
even
shatterproof.
bullet resistant.
We call
Okay.
it security
Okay.
glass.
Okay,
There's
shatter
a lot of
resistant.
terminology.
The shatter
Okay.
resistance better.
Can't say proof on nothing. Shatter resistant.
Okay,
It takes a long time to get through.
okay.
It's a deterrent. That's it.
Third project, if we were to have an
Time
active
buyer.
shooter in the building, the way we notify everyone in the school is over the PA system. So we're looking at an alarm system that would be spread throughout the schools and the corridor, similar to a fire alarm system. Someone could go, hit a button, and sound an alarm. It would be a different type of alarm. And then also, we're working with our IT department that when that button's pressed, it could text, it could send out an email, it could make a recorded announcement over the PA, it could put one call, so it's a way to instantly notify everyone what's going on. That's the third project.
What's the cost of that?
That, we have a number of 400,000 in there, and that's based on 300 or so buttons spread throughout schools for all the schools.
For every
So-
single campus? all
Right,
22?
the idea is to get one within X number of. We're also working with IT on, is that the best way to do it, or, sort of thinking through a combination of maybe it's physical buttons and things that can be put on your cell phone and on your computer.
That's what I was gonna say, everybody
There's
has
a lot
cell
of
phones.
options there, virtual and physical, and we're looking at the best way to do that.
So, I mean, currently we're $3.1 million under budget on our security. I don't have a problem with that.
Well, this is only half of the security proposals?
These are the three.
As you said earlier, the first slide said it was $4 million.
Right, the 4 million includes
The fire alarm system.
Oh, okay, yes.
So what is the cost of the fire alarm system?
For Turner High School and Junior High South combined, it's about 500,000. And for PHS and Cersei, it's about 1.2.
And what's the need for the replacement at this point? What's happening there?
So at Pearland High School, you have, when we did this, it's got an old fire alarm system. So the old systems do not have when there's a fire, you hear the bell. New systems that are in the current code also have the voice activation. So we have basically 3 different systems between Pearland, Cersei, and the new additions that are all tied together. As it was a little bit rocky when we first got them all installed because you have different panels and different ages of panels. So early on, we asked the contractor, what would it cost to just redo this whole thing, thinking that perhaps the fire marshal may require it. Turns out he didn't require it because we weren't renovating a majority of the building, but that number came out at 1.2 million. It's a lot of labor pulling wire and changing.
But we have a fully functioning system today, though, even as it sits,
Fully
right?
functioning, we got the bugs worked out. I think, Larry, would you agree with that? You guys, yeah, if you guys don't have any issues, yeah.
And everybody's trained on how to use them, and
Yes, you have 3 panels, I think, in the same room, but they have different ages.
Do they talk to each other? So like
They
if,
do, yes, they're all connected.
okay.
Is this replacing fire alarm for monitoring or for the actual alarm itself? Because there's a difference, when you have a company that monitors if there's a fire, the actual alarm, okay.
This is wired.
Just wanna be clear.
bells and everything.
The argument would just be to modernize. The argument to replace is just modernization of the system.
yeah.
For Caroline High School, I think it's modernization and simplification. It goes
Okay.
from a 3-panel system to
Okay.
That's correct.
And what about Turner's?
No, Turner Junior High South, I know, could you clarify
There's some
that?
booster panel failures. What you have is it's 2 schools on one system, and so we have booster panel failures. The head-end system needs some work, and there's some wiring issues. If you've ever been and talked to Mr. Freaking, we have lots of false alarms.
Yes. And it's interacting with the PA system and other variables. That
That's
was
another
originally
issue, is there's one PA system, one bell system for 2 schools.
originally built as one school. When we divided it in half, these issues remain not fully worked
And you said
out.
that's $500,000 to replace that?
That's,
Sounds
yeah, it's about
electrical.
500.
So would you separate it and have 2 different ones then?
The Junior South and Turner would be one project, and that's.
Yes, but would you be, because you're saying that we're having,
One unit.
okay.
Buildings are connected.
They're connected. And on the 2 schools, on the fire alarm system, you go back to that priority, what 1, 2, 3, 4 are the alarm systems, priority-wise?
Those are the 1 and 2 fire alarms.
I
But
think
the
the
Pearland one wouldn't
issue
be
of
that.
Pearland High School is functioning properly, but there's some weird anomalies going on at Junior High South and in Turner that I guess causes false alarms and things of that sort, which I think is we're kind of going to get. I personally feel like we need to get that kind of looked into.
Yes, sir.
And it goes beyond the fire. It goes to PA and bell schedules. His bells go off when it's really meant for the other side, and vice versa. And
The fire replacement won't fix the PA.
oh, okay.
But the PA's on the next list when we get there.
Okay.
You have a detail of the cost and maybe a description of all of these projects?
To varying extents.
Could
yes.
you send that? 'Cause I didn't see that in our packet.
There's just,
There's
on
more
this
detail
next
to it.
slide, there's just an overview of the total.
Yeah, I don't have detail. I was asking for
Right.
a breakdown per item.
And so under, just to go back, I keep asking this question. So under the fire alarm piece of the security and safety, you consider both those fire alarms a priority 1 or 2?
Are you speaking previous bonds or right now, currently?
Well, they said that they've got this prioritization of 1 through 4, and 1 and 2 are like,
2014, but is that a current rating system that you're using, 1 through 4?
Oh, I was saying those are our 2, those are,
Those
fire.
are 1 and 2 of the list of all the fire panels we have in the district. Those are 1 and 2.
okay.
And-
Not in terms of a facility assessment where you're rating those.
That's why they were rating.
Okay.
Yeah, we
So
just said-
from the alarm standpoint, what is the
Must do.
what is the must do? I mean, obviously we're sitting at a board level, trying to understand what the priority is to make this decision. So, I don't know, again, from the fire alarm standpoint to replacing both of those, what is the priority? And if not use bond funds, I guess, from Jeff's point of view of the outline, you know, when does it get fixed, right? And where does it come from? And how far down the road till we get that in the budget?
Well, security should be one, right?
But of the
We-
security,
We included it in with security because we said, you know, fire alarm, that's an important system. What are the two highest priorities? And that was our basis for including it. So on Junior High South and Turner, there are troubles that we have, you know, goes into trouble, which is, you know, Carolyn High School, when we put this list together, we were still having growing pains of merging these systems. So we put it on the list. We've gotten past the worst of those.
So you don't
but
necessarily
it's
need the
still-
one that.
Well,
If-
let me ask this in as well. So if we go back to Project C, which is all the new welding labs and the kitchen, is all that stuff not tied in with Turner? It's on its own separate alarm monitoring or alarm system?
Those are being tied into the existing system.
So we're gonna have
So I guess,
Yeah,
que-
so
I
that's
we
guess
have
like
half
a
a
more of a
working
priority one.
system in the new construction, but then a system that doesn't work properly in the old.
no, they're tying them in.
They
To
What are you
If we did
tying
the
in with
project
something that doesn't
non-functional
work?
system.
I would say, we will get, our plan is to get the whole system to work, but it's gonna be like you have in Pearland, where the systems are talking to each other. You have one that's got voice, one that doesn't, and you have, you know, multiple systems that are tied together. So, that's.
I guess I go back to Crystal's point earlier, is when we were doing this, was this not considered when we were gonna build new buildings to tie this back into a not so much functioning?
Well, I don't remember us worrying or thinking that there was a problem in 2014 when we came up with a bond that, or started the facilities, that there was this issue. I don't remember it, but
So our approach for these additions is, everything is to the current code. We're fairly selective how far you extend that into the existing building, because we was beyond the limits of the bond. Prices is pretty expensive to go back into existing buildings and.
So on Turner and Junior High South, did they give you a breakdown on what that cost would be versus the whole entire, including Pearland High School?
The price, where we got the price on Junior High South and Turner was just an estimate from a vendor that was $5,000.
For just Pearland and, Turner and South.
That's for Turner Junior High South existing. And then the Pearland 1.2 million was an early estimate we got from Stewart.
So if I was equating this to the roof projects, we know that Lawhon is of utmost need, and I guess I'm equating Turner and Junior High South to that same priority level if I'm equating it to the roofs. Is that fair?
In my opinion, it sounds like Turner and Junior High South are in that same category since we're having problems with it. I'm not sure Pearland is in that category.
Okay.
What would, Mr. Berger, what would happen if we got these new projects up and running at Turner with the welding and the cooking, I call it the cooking?
Introduction of the new
And what would
product,
happen?
All of that and the wonkiness of the current system is inherently troublesome.
So let's
Well, yeah,
Adding
I
the
mean-
welding lab, adding the HVAC, adding the culinary, with the wonkiness of the current system there.
it's like a breeding
Yeah,
ground for
I
trouble.
mean, that kind of makes, but at this time, Pearland High School is squared away.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I said, it's just complicated.
Yeah, so it's got a 3-unit system versus a new voice-activated system. So, I mean, I would certainly be in support of the Turner and Junior High South retrofit, given the amount of funds we have available in the current security package that's left over. And/or security, for that matter, just in general, is number one, right? So if we need to secure our schools first and foremost. So.
Press on, and then we'll have opportunities to come back. These were, at these security committee meetings, we had consultants come in that work in the security field and talk to us about what other districts were doing. And so these were just some other things, a couple of examples of some other things that we looked at. But I say we looked at, 15, 20 different types of things that
Sure. So the other category of things is, well, I guess generic, we're calling other projects. So what we did was we polled all the principals back in November, and we just said, you know, it may be possible that we have bond funds left over. If we do, what are your needs? So the requests we got probably about 100 requests, I guess, altogether. Most of them were, you know, additional carpet in these certain areas, furniture and things like that, relatively small things, new marquees at some schools. So we synced that up with what the maintenance, what the maintenance sort of realities were with that. So we kind of cross-checked them to what the maintenance priorities were. And we floated that out to about $1 million worth of projects of this nature that we see here. So we wanted to try to focus on larger projects since it's bond funding. So the very small projects, we said, some of those we were able to incorporate into Package E, for example, at the elementaries. But what floated out of this was 4 categories. So it is, let's see, intercoms so replace intercom systems. That happens to be at Turner and Junior High South. They've had quite a few problems with that intercoms. Same thing at Barry Miller. They had been, school had reported it and corroborated that we've got issues at those. Jameson had several issues. The top issue was the gym flooring. It's the old kind of flooring, and it's bubbling and peeling and everything. So this is to replace that with the system that we're currently doing at the schools. We also got so classroom carpet. We've been trying a lot of the. There were incorporated into several of these bond projects was. Trying to get carpeted classrooms morphed into tile classrooms, just for ease of maintenance and durability. So
What about safety, though? When you start talking about tile, we have 135 slips, trips, and falls in our district every year, which causes $200,000 a year in additional work comp costs. So
We also have trips and falls on the old carpet that's bumping up that we can no longer stretch, repair, or replace.
I agree. It's certainly.
Sanitary. I mean, it'd be easier to clean a tile than a carpet.
I don't know that overall, though. I mean, what
Well,
you
most of our campuses are VCT.
tile?
Yes, sir.
So this is to do that.
What's the difference between the intercom system and a local sound system? What's the difference?
Local sound systems, like in the gym when you're playing music, that comes through speakers that are in the gym.
Cafeteria sound systems.
Right? You're talking on from the stage on a mic. It's local just to that
Competition
room.
gyms, those sound systems with PAs in that local area.
And intercom, of course, is the bell.
This is
So
roughly 1 million, you're saying?
right, and that's for carpet to tile in classrooms, local sound systems, and the transition center was kind of off the radar screen, but there's some old finishes there. We figured we'd just do some refreshing.
So you have detail on where these sound systems are going to be replaced. I know the intercoms at Turner and Junior High. Like where you're going to do classroom, the carpet to tile, and you got detail on all of that.
My estimate is $100,000 for that part of it, which is 50 classrooms at $2,000 each. We know 13 of those are at Jameson. That was a high need. That was Richter had requested, corroborated by maintenance. Those are so there are 3 or 4 schools that needed that to some extent, and so we're figure 50 classrooms total. I mean,
Okay.
probably there's more than that.
Okay.
Some of it is still in pretty good shape, so we're just.
Okay, but prior to tomorrow, we can't have a list of this is where and this is how much. Can we get that? Okay.
Before tomorrow's meeting.
Okay. Like for all of everything that's going on.
Okay.
So the next category, athletics, PBK is going to talk to you about the press box, facade, several presentations, so we'll just quickly review that for you. It'll be a summary of what you've seen before. However, on the facade, that was a high price, so we asked them to look at another option, maybe something cheaper for your consideration or at a lower price. So we'll show that.
ago. Gives you additional amenities, larger hospitality area, observation decks, larger video room, larger press room. And so it's a lot larger of, almost 6,000 square feet. Press box.
For 1.6 million?
1.6 million above the current bond. Total cost, and this was bid, is 5.8 million. There's 4.2 million already in the bond for press box bond scope. So if you expand this, it adds 1.6 million.
Was
We have a slide that summarizes all that.
Yeah, is there a
explain that.
change in that
is there a
number?
change?
Yeah.
Was, I thought the original number was 3.4.
What happened there?
The,
So why are we at 4.2 to start?
The 3.4 was actually a construction, like our, and the 4.2 is the total project cost, which includes software. So it's furniture, design fees. Wanted to transform that into apples to apples to get the total project.
So just to be clear, it went from 3.4 to 4.2.
I don't specifically remember the 3.4 number,
It was 3.4.
but
3.4 was what was in the bond that was approved by the voters, and so you're saying that number is now from 3.4 to 4.2.
so the bond well, yes, short answer, yes. The bond had a construction estimate, and then it had an estimate, an additional for escalation, then a contingency, then soft cost.
I did that.
That's how 3.4 gets there.
But that's changed just since October when we talked about this originally.
We were not reporting total project costs. We were reporting construction costs, which was everything we were reporting was apples to apples in terms of construction costs. But now that you're trying to figure out what can we actually spend to get every single dollar utilized, you have to take into consideration the total project cost, because there are other costs associated with doing the press bonds.
Why would we not have been looking at
Yeah.
total costs from the very get-go?
Ridiculous.
I think what happened is these guys, in their world, it's construction costs, and in our world, it's project cost. And I didn't realize we were.
Is there anything else that we've been seeing today that it's not including the entire cost?
No, everything I've reported up here is.
So all of the
Total
other
cost.
expansions in every other building, you guys were okay with? I mean, from construction cost to our final fitting, they're not moving it?
Typically, what we bring you is a construction cost. So like when we bring you the GMP for package E, it's gonna be a GMP for a construction cost. What you see on John's spreadsheet is larger than that because it's the total project cost. If you,
And then
That's-
FF&E.
I can, if you, can you go back to my second? So, for each one of those projects, you see a construction line and a soft cost. So, the total of those two is the bold print, and that's what we all need to be considering here when we're talking about total cost, because it's more than just construction, it is soft. So when I'm showing you these options, if you do this versus this, you need to be seeing the total project cost. At some point, I do think that 3-point-something number got thrown out, and I didn't catch the fact that.
I mean, we
Oh.
sat up here and had discussion after discussion about adding
Forever.
3
we
point
did.
whatever million to expand the press box. I mean, that was the go-to number, so I don't feel like, when I saw that today, the 1.6, I'm like, wow, what do we do to make this more palatable for everybody? Because that's what it feels like. Sorry, it's more of a statement than a question. I apologize.
That's, but what you want to consider is total project.
I'm questioning.
Go back to the list. Did you show it a second ago, please? right, well, back up, right there. IT at the very bottom, correct? Is that, that's straight, I mean,
We're not spending any more than that?
less,
Correct.
more, what are we doing?
That is projected to be on budget, so that we're not managing that. Greg Barte's managing that, and Greg reports that he's gonna finish on budget. So our assumptions in the 220 million is that line item's gonna be in.
But we don't ever report on that. We just have a number.
Well,
We've been,
we've
we've been given,
given you earlier updates that show how that
Yeah.
19 million
have been spending.
is going to be spent. He may have savings within it,
Yeah,
but of
it's not on
course,
a comprehensive list.
He'll update us tomorrow on that? Can he update us tomorrow?
well, it isn't really, I don't see the relevance because we're going to use that money for technology since it's there. There's no doubt that between now and the next bond election, let's say it's 8 years away or 6 years away, we ought to hold on to that for technology at least.
Right, I think the concern would be more so with us going over the 19.3 million.
Oh, but I think, yeah, we would have to come to y'all, but of course, we will be spending more than that. It's gonna have to be built into the budget and built or requested through fund balance. I think Jeff's request earlier to combine all that with the maintenance and all that stuff can give you a good idea of refresh rates over the next 5 years or plus. But until then, this figure is just what we know we were built into the budget to get done. It will still leave other things to be funded in the future that we'll need to do.
Thank you, I'm good for that.
Then we worked on, we felt there was some trepidation about the cost for the facade. We felt it was a large ticket item, and that a lot of the comments that we were receiving were that they liked the idea of making the stadium look like a district stadium and not solely be the rig. And so we tried to figure out a way to do that, achieve that goal, but without spending quite as much money. So if you look at this slide right here, this is the new concept, which is about a third of the cost of what we presented, but we think it still gives you a lot of the benefits of what the full facade. So if you go back a slide or two, this was the full facade that we bid to begin with, which does a great job of branding the stadium. But then there's just a lot of bells and whistles here that when we were talking to Coach and Larry Berger, that we felt, there may be some savings in. So if you go 2 slides forward, you can still get a lot of the advantages of the facade for a drastically reduced cost with this.
And yet you still have the rig at the top.
Well, that's already there, and so we can look at doing something with it, but that is actually part of the existing deal, elevator tower, and so, we
It's
can
on the
look at
scoreboard,
replacing
too.
that sign with something else, but that part of the structure is being built around in all of these schemes. So we just kind of left that there to remind everybody that that is not new, that is there right now.
The rig is on the scoreboard too. Kind of built-in thing. Sir?
On the field, too.
It is on the field, yeah. Mhm.
But there are other,
It's ghosted in the turf. You can see it. It's still there, but it's not painted, but you can see it.
there are other things we can do in terms of branding that we can look at, once we've got a direction on the scope.
Okay. That we can, okay.
Graphics are easy.
Mhm.
Takes us back to summary slide here.
What are we doing, real quick, I'm kind of wondering about the rig. So, we're kind of co-branding this, right, with Dawson as well. So, what's the inside gonna look like?
The inside of what? The press box itself?
Yeah, I mean, are we
that's great. That's a
going
great,
to mute
that's a great
colors
question.
or,
So
how are we
our
doing
scheme
it?
is to have a very neutral press box. So grays, tans, blacks, whites, and so that whichever team is home, they can bring out their fat guys, you know, the large posters or whatever. They can have the TVs, you know, showing their logos, and so that's easily changeable. And then, but the actual hard built-in infrastructure, the countertops, the casework, the tile in the bathrooms, the paint on the walls, would all be very neutral, so that whichever team is home, they could then accentuate with their colors, be it the maroon and black or the red, white, and blue.
That's the way most of them are, Jeff, neutral,
Yeah.
district stadiums.
I'd rather a new stadium.
So you can see on that slide, the $6 million was the original.
What all do you give us the two questions? Go back to that picture. Do you get the two big columns of,
Now, the centerpiece is basically the same. It's there back on each side. We get eliminated.
We're providing some additional fencing, we're moving the ticket booth where it kind of wants to be in the middle. We're redoing that plaza right there. We're doing the two towers and the grill work, so you don't see quite as much of the underside of the bleachers. We're tying it into the new press box.
so you're gonna add a plaza. So we're losing parking?
We're not losing that much, it's like 6 spots.
It's right there in front of the,
Yeah, it's just right there.
it's really a bad,
We don't have parking anyway over there.
It's handicapped.
to the left.
It actually makes,
It's not there.
it actually, what we're trying to do is add a drop-off. It's really hard to get people
Yeah.
near the front, and
Right.
those parking spots that are really close
Yeah.
provide a lot of congestion.
You turn an L
No,
right,
it makes sense, right.
you know, hey, you turn an L right there, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We award
Right now,
those
there's no
to
brick.
Booster
There's no-
or
nothing.
something or
That's
other. and-
2.7
It's just, he's asking what they're right now. and it's
That's
just-
total
it's-
cost,
That's-
right?
That is total project cost, and it's just an estimate.
What's that?
Or just
Wouldn't be
the,
doing
that
anything to that.
facade.
Yeah,
That's
there's
what it looks
nothing
like
yet.
right now.
No, it doesn't look like this.
The only thing they'd be adding would be some pictures. It looks exactly like that, except for the two columns. We're talking
Right, the
each side of
columns, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was kind
In
of.
the middle, they've changed the middle, but
It looks
on
just
either
like
side,
this.
it wouldn't change.
Right.
$6 million.
$7 million, there's no way.
Second option is almost like, what are those photos made out of, those players?
So
Is it like a
there's
canvas or
a
something?
vinyl
Vinyl?
that is basically made out of PVC, that has little holes cut into it, so it's like a mesh, so that if wind blows through it, they don't get torn up, but they last a long time.
And that includes nothing, like any, it seems to me there's like, posts and things that are painted maroon or things within the stadium that have color on them. But this does not include any renovations within the stadium itself, correct?
Outside of
It
what the
does
plaza
include
is.
the sound system, replacing the sound system. As that's in the base bond scope. And, you know, what we're doing now is extending the bleachers on the visitor side.
Isn't the concession stand, isn't that getting there some sort of renovation, Mr. Pardo?
There's a few minor things we're doing to that concession
do the-
stand.
I'd rather
We're
do
changing
the
out the
wall
old
than the
windows in the front, and I think we're adding a door to the back storage area.
The alternate one?
We're doing some of the casework, and then at the officials' locker room, we're adding a shower and expanding their area slightly, so that they have a little bit more room.
We could do the.
I was a
top-
proponent
Top 11 categories
of
for the HVACs.
the expanded press box and possibly the facade. But my challenge with that is there's a lot of things at the rig that would still be left untouched, right? The renovation to the concession stand was pretty light. You know, we're replacing some, yeah, and we're replacing some windows because those windows don't work, right? And you know, other light things. We're not doing bathrooms on either side. I mean, there's no touch-ups to just to what we have going on inside the stadium. The other thing I always ask about is, you know, we have that temporary lighting, and then what we're going to do is, depending on the facade project, you were going to be able to implement some permanent solution for the lighting of the stands.
We have the permanent lighting in now.
The permanent lighting is in now. Okay,
It's ordered, it's on its way.
it's on its way for
It's
both
poles.
sides. It's poles for both sides. Okay, okay,
It's not attached to the bleachers anymore.
okay.
And by the way, Charles, I know there were a lot of complaints about that at first, but Mr. Berger and others have added lights since then. I really do not see that as a remaining major issue. With those two poles, we're going to be fine. We're going to be,
I didn't know we had 2 poles coming. I thought this was going to be a part of the
When
facade.
we delayed a year, we
We
didn't want to
delayed-
leave a temporary
we-
solution that might fail
Okay,
there, because you
Okay.
got another season coming.
yeah,
So we went ahead and put that into the original, into the bond scope, so it would come.
right.
And we would work around them with whatever we're doing for the rest of it, to make sure that.
Behind it?
Are the poles going to be behind the stands?
Yes.
They're going to be
Oh,
behind the
so-
stands? Okay. So I wasn't,
I did not know.
okay.
I
Yeah,
didn't
so
know that.
my whole point in this
I
is
didn't
that
know
when we did the original update to the lights, we had to put in the temporary lights. My whole point is that I don't want to leave a temporary solution in place forever.
yeah, but even the
But that's-
temporary solution was permanent. I mean, the lights I think I'm giving credit to you, Mr. Berger, for putting those in. Those,
Yeah, no, but are those staying?
When they do the towers, then we will take them down.
Okay, yeah, that's my point. The temporary solution is not acceptable permanently. So now we have a permanent solution that's coming in for the lights. Thank you very much. Yeah,
But I guess what I hear you saying, and I agree, like if we're gonna look at PHS and the fire alarm system, we're sort of doing the same thing with the rig at this point.
yeah, and
And I
Yeah.
agree. I don't know that it's the brand that we would choose to go with, but if we don't go with some option here that's within the scope that we have, then what are we gonna do? Go out for a bond for a new stadium? I mean, that's not,
I mean, we have the option, just like I said at the last meeting, we have the option to do nothing, right? We've done the non-controversial pieces of the rig. I think that's what we called them, with the stands and whatnot. Now we got lights and coming, so we're gonna figure out. We've got a press box, so we've got a decision to make there. And but as far as the facade, my problem is that we put together a lot of pieces without one comprehensive stroke at the project, right? And so you can see how that's happened tonight. We've talked about, okay, we're going to do these windows, but not those. We've got 3 different panels at a school. We got 2 different panels at another one. And so, we've got to take care of those because that's where we are, right? But just sticking the pieces together is not how I would prefer to proceed, and that's not what I would prefer to spend taxpayer money on, right? So I'm comfortable with saying that doing nothing or not going, taking the facade, I think doing nothing is a feasible option.
I guess I see it, if I'm, and I'll be the first to do this because I think it's gonna come out eventually, pitting the press box against the facade.
Mm-hmm.
The facade to me is more of a necessity because it's what pulls and unifies the district together. For me, that's a community need that our kids from Dawson be able to travel. I mean, they're already having to go across town. They need something that they can feel like is their own. And I feel like the facade gives the community that. And the amount of user and in base and the number of kids and families and sports teams and everything that's going through there, they deserve an opportunity to feel at home as much as PHS does. And so I don't know what the amount that we put it that is, but I feel like something needs to happen to the exterior of that to separate it as much as possible from PHS, to make it a standalone stadium as much as possible, the Pearland Stadium or whatever, because the kids from the other side of the district deserve that.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Crystal, but I think primarily in terms of function, and the problem I've had, and you may have had it too, is when you go on a Friday night, and you go particularly in the room where Dr. Davis is and those folks, you literally cannot move.
Oh, I'm not arguing
And-
that the basic expansion is needed.
And so, well, and maybe we aren't different on this, but what I'm saying is, to me, the most important priority is that the press box get bigger to accommodate the crowd before we talk about the facade, in my opinion. But
Sure.
I also see the necessity. I remember Coach Wells saying, you know, we felt like we were the visitors when we came to the stadium.
And I think we're saying the same thing. I guess I'm looking at the 1.6 versus the 2.7 about the mega press box versus the bond scope in its own right.
But I mean, what I think Ben has shown me is I really don't see it as a mega press box. I see it as making he showed me that the original scope, and it seems it gave a little bit more space. It was called an expansion, but it was not space that allowed less crowding and less people in the functional areas that face the stadium. So it wasn't enough. Is that fair, Ben?
Like I said before, I think the press box, you get options, but what happens when you talk about the usable space and the functional space that I've talked about, becomes more functional, and you got more corridor in the back and everything, but in terms of the usable space, and the point where people are actually gonna be working and doing, that you're not gaining a whole lot. So it does go from 23 to 4,000. But a lot of that 4,000 is in the back end of that in terms of stores, back corridor space. It's not so much of the usable space. You are gaining a little bit usable space, but not to the point that we limit ourselves. No,
What gives you the
Best
room in
of
the back,
both worlds.
but
It
also
gives you
gives
the
you the room
back
in
and
the
it
front.
gives you the front, correct?
Mr. Pardo, let me tell you where my frustration is, and I agree with you. I mean, I've been up there, and but I look back to the meeting we had in March, and I look at the schedule that was put out by staff, and it shows that the PH rig project was budgeted under total at $6.5 million. And then as we fast forward into September of 2018, I look at the actual request from staff that was put out in regards to the GMP from Stewart Builders, and it came in at roughly $8.167 million. And then in the summary of the statement that was put out in September of 2018, the last line says the resulting GMP is $260,000 that was originally less than budgeted. So the problem I have is that the number keeps going up. Today originally was 3.4 when it was approved. Now we're at 4.2, and to get that expanded press box, now are we at 6 or up over 5? I mean, so we're at 5.8 today because total. But as we were kept told, each time we see the slide, we keep getting this number, right? But then as we show up today, that number has increased, right? I mean, it's increased from roughly a construction cost now to a total cost. And just looking at the documents that were provided between March and September, which is a 6 months difference, it went from 6.5 to 8.1. And the document that was provided, and here it says the GMP, guaranteed max price, was $260,000 less than originally budgeted. I don't know where, I guess I'm confused in why why is this a moving target, right? If you come to me and said, hey, it's 4.2 and you get the expanded press box, I mean, that's, it's not a bad thing. But I mean, when we get GMP, if we give you instructions tomorrow to say, go do the expanded, if we're okay at 5.8 or 5.5, you come back with GMP and it's at 6.8, I mean, then we have no choice. We spent the money to tell them to go forward, and you're another $1 million above where you need to be. So that's the problem I have, Mr. Pardo, with why this number keeps changing.
So it doesn't, I don't think it keeps changing. There's just different, it's defined differently. So there is the budget for construction, there is the actual GMP cost.
Okay, well, let me.
There's the budget for total project cost, and then there's these total project projection estimates that we're looking at.
Okay, so this document back in March says bond GMP, guaranteed maximum price schedules, right? Not construction costs without additional included. And it says clearly right here, the rig press box, 6.535. And then if you go fast forward to September, the GMP we got from Stewart Builders, the actual document that was brought for approval, was 8.1.
That was for the rig, press box, and the facade.
The 8.1.
One included the
Included
facade,
both.
which was like 5.2 million.
So that rig,
So
No,
the
hold
facade-
on. Because if you scroll further down into that meeting we had,
Which meeting
there's a
are you talking
GMP right here on page 43 that says guaranteed maximum price for the rig facade was 5.385. There was a separate GMP for the facade for 5.3 million. So how does it 8.1? You have two GMPs, one for 5.3 and one for 8.1.
They're not mutually exclusive. So the 8.1 was a GMP that we presented for the facade and the expanded press box. We presented that. The board decision was we don't want to do anything further. Bring it back as the expanded press box. I'm just trying to remember how that went.
So
They were additive, right? It was
No,
eight.
They were not additive.
No, I mean, for the total number he was talking about, I recall that number being closer to.
Well, no, I'm looking at, and I'm just going by what's in the board minutes, that it says GMP for your consideration is construction of phase services related to the rig. The scope consists of expansion, renovation of the press box, adding seats, new sound system, and renovating the official room and concession stands. Does not include the facade.
Okay.
What-
Well, you're kind of losing me, but Sean,
But
I
I
think
guess
that-
my point is
That was not what you just read is not 8.1 million. I'm not looking at
Tom, where are you
what
looking?
are, but-
Where's that coming from?
this is from September's board meeting. I'm looking at the regular meeting, I guess, agenda item that you guys prepared. That's from staff. That item was prepared, and behind that,
Is it a GMP in that figure?
correct. And
Well,
then
now remember,
behind
Sean-
the staff agenda item is the GMP for 8.1.
Okay, but first of all, and maybe I'm off in understanding what you're saying, but Jeff pointed out earlier, the GMP is just what you're approving with the GMP is the price that we're going to pay the general contractor. Does not include all those other costs, architecture costs, and everything else. So if I don't have those figures in front of me, but there's a difference between GMP and total project cost.
Correct. And the project cost back in March was only at 6.5. And we could debate. My point is that, again, if we were to vote tomorrow to do the expanded, how do we know that number won't change again is my problem.
I can tell you that exactly. So a few months ago, we got an actual GMP for that expanded press box. That was in September, I believe. We brought that to you. The number was, off the top of my head, 5.2 million. And so what I've done, now that we're delaying a year, my task was, what would that cost a year from now? So I escalated that 5% and included soft costs for furniture, equipment, and foods. That's how I got 6%. It was 5.8, that's the number you remember, but that was till it slipped a year, and so I added, $6 million is our estimate for total project cost for. I keep my numbers
Facade or
straight.
for the press box?
For the facade or for the press box?
The facade was GMP'd at 5.35 million last September. There was an
What page
there
you
was
on,
an
Sean?
agenda item specific to that, and there was a separate agenda item specific to the 8.1 that did not
I'm looking at
include
it.
the facade.
5.385 million.
There's
back
two separate
in-
agenda items, one that
Right.
included the facade
Page
and one
36
that
and
didn't
page
include the
41.
facade. 8.1 does not include the facade.
Okay, and possibly 8.1 was the press box plus all the other associated.
Yes,
Including the
it is
concession
the
stands.
total rig project. That's
Yeah.
correct. I'm not disputing that.
Yeah, everything.
Right, but my point was you were saying that
Adding
that
seating.
8.1 included the facade and it doesn't.
No,
was
it
my
doesn't.
mistake. I'm
No,
right.
it includes the expansion.
It was the bleachers and
Down
everything.
to 3 million that we then called rig phase 1.
Yes.
The leftover
Correct. We did just part of
That was-
the
We
project.
brought you back another GMP the next month,
8.16.
I believe in October, that was just rig phase
The
one.
non-controversial.
Correct.
So you're absolutely correct, the price keeps changing every month.
No, my point is, to Mr. Pardo's point, is just from a standpoint of the board, if we have to give direction as to the scope, right, to go do the drawings and that, and once that happens, it doesn't need to change, but again, you're basing it on these other items, or, you know, tomorrow you want us to make a decision on, you know, what priorities we want to do with the rest of the bond money, including or not including the rig. But I think to understand that, you have to understand what the number is going to be for the press box, so you know what other priorities you want to do.
The numbers overall on that blue summary are estimates for the press box. As with all the bond projects, until we get bids, they are estimates.
We've been
It's our
going back
best-
to
our
our
best
contractor
number.
with our latest market value, and updating these prices as escalation occurs, as the market changes.
Well, and so we can just simply say, when they come back with our, the cost, we just don't approve it. We move on.
Can say that.
That's our option, and that's the option that I see. I mean, currently what we have is a moving target. We can say all day long that we approve all these different options, but when we get the GMP, we just
So
don't
you
approve
would-
it.
When would you have the GMP?
And that's not fair to staff or the taxpayers who voted for the expanded press box.
Good point.
No one voted for the,
Fair point.
we have a bond scope press box. That's what we're talking about.
He calls it extended, and he calls the extended extended.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, inflation and construction costs aren't going to go down, I mean, over the next
Correct.
couple years. So the longer you wait, the higher the price is going to go up. So the more you delay on this decision, the longer the more this cost of this press box is going to be.
Well, and
It's just the same as with every single other
It's-
project
it's
that we've
not-
done for y'all. Whenever we did the security, y'all
Right.
gave us a budget, we brought you a design, we worked with staff to make sure we were in budget. When we did Dawson High School, we did a really good job, we were $11 million under budget. When we worked with Palin High School, we did not, we had a lot of extra scope we added, we brought the staff, we said, hey, look at all this extra scope we're adding, there's no way this is gonna be under budget. But with the press box, I mean, we've looked at it so many times with these options.
Exactly. And then there's nothing that says that you can't wait till after GMP of the press box to do the other maintenance issues. I mean, there's nothing says you have to decide maintenance tomorrow. I mean,
Right.
you can decide when the GMP comes in for the press box and it comes in higher or lower, then you can make your decision on what funds are left over. Because I guarantee
don't-
if
that's-
if GMP comes in higher than what you're budgeting and you've already, started doing work on these other projects, then
look, I asked that question several months ago regarding the facade. The facade is an independent structure not tied to any of the other improvements that we want to do.
Did
So
we
if,
need to know if we're going to do the expanded or the bond scope to do the facade? Was that a
we're going to
relevant
vote on
factor?
that, though. I mean, we're going to get
Tomorrow,
expanded.
we're voting on that.
We're voting. They're
I
two
know they're
separate.
two separate things, but you
The only advantage is if you can tell us that you can do the smaller facade and either one of the press box options, and we can design them at the same time, you will save a little bit of money because we can,
It's all one project.
well, we can tie the.
It's structured together.
Consolidate the construction costs for paying the GC less, and we can tie the structure together. Whereas before, we didn't feel like there was a legitimate shot at being able to know if you're doing the facade or not. So we made it an alternate, so it was a standalone structure. But that doesn't mean it has to be. We're gonna be putting in a whole lot of structure for these new stairs that we can use to build the facade if we know, and that will be less expensive as well, because we won't have a cantilevering wall, we'll have a wall that's built as a part of the press box.
It's not
You mean-
freestanding then.
Not right, exactly.
Right. Well, even given the previous conversations that we had about the security options, with fire alarms and things of that sort, roofs, HVAC systems, those are basic fundamental services that we're obligated to provide. To me, the bond scope on the rig press box is pretty standard, and I'm going to hold my. I don't like cutting it too close to the available funds, given our conversation right here. I would rather just take that $13.6 million and reduce it to a maximum of 9 million and figure out what things are within that bond scope and move on. We're gonna have scope creep and so on. We've just seen it. We just spent 30 minutes talking about it. That's what happens. So I'm not gonna,
How are you saying 9 million? Where you,
I just
where you-
picked a
He
number.
just cut it off just to be safe.
arbitrary?
Yeah, it's an arbitrary number. It makes no, I mean, other than
So,
my brain.
quick
it makes no
question.
sense.
It's a
the 2.7 rig facade, if we were to do that, at some point, could you come back and add to that, or is it just stuck like that? Like, look at 2.7 and then add more to it later on, like you do it in phases? Does that make sense?
It'd be
Right,
a little
then
bit
it's putting
trickier,
them
but
in.
you could come back later, and you're talking about adding more wall down the line.
Like if we wanted to start right there, and then later on finish out the original facade. That makes sense, like do it in phases.
I mean, we can.
Like add the additional columns and stuff.
Yeah,
that were on the-
like brick it in and all that, like phase one, this is our phase one, this is phase, you know.
I like the original facade. I think it's great. I was,
I think it, yeah, I
Yes,
do
you
too.
probably could, because at that point, all that's gonna be freestanding wall anyway.
That's right.
Because the center section is the only one we're talking about. that's
It-
gonna have the
it's
press
tied
box.
in.
Yeah,
Okay.
so once you get past that, then it's freestanding, so probably so, you could add those pieces as you
One
go
thing
down
to
the road.
consider with these rig
Adding a
projects is
fence.
there's a year cycle, you know, if you defer something, it slips for a whole year. So, you know, building is from November through August. That's why, you know, right now, the press box has slipped a year.
Sure.
I just don't see that we have the money.
So you're saying $4.3 million for the extended press box and the rig facade that you proposed, right? That's basically what I'm coming with,
Smaller facade, right?
Yeah, the bond scope.
which is less
Let's go
than
press
the
box.
original rig facade. Both of those. Right?
I think expanded
That's
press
correct.
box and small facade.
Okay, because sometimes,
Yeah,
6 and 2
What she's
7.
saying is the original
You
facade
do
bid
those
was
two.
5.8.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
right? So
That's right.
4.3 is less than $6 million, which would have been the
You're right.
original rig facade.
As far as the timing, we need to make, the main thing is we need a decision on the press box.
Well,
Not-
it'll be tomorrow.
li-
We-
Yeah, and I don't know if
Very
this is,
disappointing
You're
for
gonna-
me because I really like that facade.
yeah.
I do.
Which one?
I like them
Original.
both, but I really I like
$6
Crystal's
million
idea of branding and stuff like that. I think we need to do
I
that.
completely, I think that's, I agree, but what I'm trying to, my point is, we do have the facade, the one that they came up with,
It's 4.3.
right?
With
And
both.
the extended press box, and now you're getting both of what most of us, I mean, except for two of you, want.
So what are you
Wait,
guys
so,
gonna,
sorry, can you say that one more time?
on the rest of that list to me?
Okay, when we first came in, I mean, talking about this before we knew about the new facade, right? I think all of us are wanting the rig to look different, to be a home for Dawson as well,
Right.
right? It was $6 million. Well, that's, okay, we're looking at $1.7 million less, if,
Oh, I see.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
By doing
You
the
add the
expanded press box
and
and the rig,
The new alternate.
the
Right.
new alternate rig
4.3.
facade, which is less than just the facade. That's,
Less
that
than the
some
big
of you
facade.
guys were coming in here saying, I want that,
Right, okay.
7.6 for if you want everything.
if you want,
Yeah, but,
If you want the
Yeah.
full
Saying,
wall.
right.
you want the whole.
But 4.3 if we just
Versus
want.
right,
4.3
but,
versus
but I mean,
7.6
I'm,
is
what
what
I'm,
you're looking at.
Then
yeah.
maybe a roof.
But the issue is that the drawings that you guys did for the expanded press box plus the full
Yep.
facade, those were bid. We had a GMP. Is it even feasible to talk about even using those drawings anymore? Do they have to be redone? You have to, or they have to be rebid?
Well, if you do
Depends on what option you pick.
the
Pick an option.
expanded press box, those drawings are complete.
They're done.
Okay.
There's no other cost to it.
We would just put it out again to just confirm prices and assume that they'd go, but we're assuming budget-wise, they'd probably go up 5%.
But also, I think he asked about the facade, right?
Well, I was just asking, just,
Facade's that's a new, you'd have to get that bid out, right?
yeah, but no, I was talking about the original drawings they did for the full facade. Well, the facade as an alternate, which like you said is a freestanding wall, and the, yeah, so those are separate structures.
The
from
center section's pretty much staying, Charlie.
It's, okay.
So it's cutting those off each side and then around the corners.
Right.
Timing of the projects would be the same. So right now, they have drawn and ready to, and already bid, actually, one time, the larger press box and full facade. But we can't start construction until November anyway, so.
Where would those lights go? The 2 additional light poles you said, correct? Where would
They're
they
already
be?
happening.
They're in the back.
They'd be-
It makes it look good, doesn't it?
They're in the scope that's being under construction right now.
How did it get cut?
Non-controversial.
So, yeah, but it wouldn't be tied into the, either, I mean, the poles would be on the structure or,
They're freestanding.
so if we built the new 2.7 facade, would that be right in there?
They'd stay right where they're at right now. They're on the ends.
Yeah,
I got you.
that
I
says
follow you.
add 3.4.
You
This
lose a
now
lot.
adds
You lose a
1.6.
lot with the abbreviated facade. Because one of my issues was when you come up either north or south of the stadium, you'll still see that steel skeleton around there, right? Which was what Dickinson did. Dickinson put the facade just behind the stands, right? And from either side, you don't get the look, right? Which to me was important.
Look
right?
on the sides?
Yeah,
Pull that up.
You want the
and
look
put
on the
that
sides?
there.
yeah.
Mr. Berger,
You
how
don't care
much
about the
were
look on the
your
front?
11
I mean, when I'm
items?
saying size, I mean from either north or south of the stadium.
Well, Charles,
So like
Not
the-
fr- this is east. That's exactly what I'm talking about, right? That's what I'm talking about.
3.9 for the top
That was just
12?
important to me. I mean, at this point, we're just having kind of like personal light discussions.
No,
Correct.
that's just
well, I'm,
the,
I'm trying to see if
we
there's
got-
any majority opinion that to draw
I'm
together.
gonna tell you, this is,
one Lahan?
actually, I don't know
What
what's
is it,
gonna
what is the
happen
top
tomorrow.
two?
And
Lahan and,
that's my question. Can we not separate the issues about what we
Lahan
want to spend
Thursday,
money
Saturday,
on for
Monday.
facilities
How much are
kinds
those
of
Yes,
things
we
and
can do that.
the rig? Because I feel like when we intertwine them all together, it becomes a very difficult, meshy thing.
Well, I think the primary reason that it has gotten to this point is that
Oh, there it is.
the facilities committee, the oversight committee,
3.7.
basically said, we're not saying don't do anything beyond what you originally said on the rig until you've identified all the other projects that you would prioritize. And so that it's being brought to you in that way. It's saying, okay, we've now identified other projects that we think are also high priority. And so that's, I'm honoring their request to make sure that we've considered those other things before you make a decision on the rig.
Well, to be honest, I also have beef, and there's my technical term for the night. That, I mean, I'm looking, and this is exactly what I remember. I just couldn't find it the way Sean's finding it, and I'm hoping that they can put it here for everybody to see. But we're looking at the expanded press box of 59.7 square feet, or 59,774 square feet, whatever.
5,900.
It adds,
57,000.
it adds $3.4 million to the bond scope. And now we have the exact same printout, exactly the same with the exact same, and it makes it with it being 1.6 million above bond projections. Everything else about the slide is exactly the same, but yet it's reduced by $1.5 million.
That was an SD estimate that we just, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I think now I understand what you're talking about. So if you
That
go
one.
back.
Yes, no, that is the
back-
current.
You're talking about this slide my.
They're talking about
No.
my SD presentation from like 2 years ago.
No, this is
It's
in,
3.4 versus the 1.6, and they want to know what the discrepancy is.
this is March
between the two
6th of
projections.
2018.
What is, are you?
This is not long ago.
No, it was a presentation to us.
It was the original SD presentation 2 years ago now. We told you it was about 3.4 million expanded.
Closer, this is listed at March
But
of
that-
2018.
It didn't change. We never updated that presentation. Since then, bid it with Stewart and got real numbers.
Okay.
And that's what John is carrying now, is our real Stewart builders based on our actual construction drawings. Everything was designed. That's what we're budgeting on now.
What I understand you saying is that the original was 3.2, it's moved up to 4
No, yeah, 4.2.
4.2 to include the soft cost, but that's the bond scope.
Right.
What I'm seeing here is the expanded
Right.
bond
And
scope.
we thought it was gonna be a lot more when we were budgeting it with our SD level drawings than we did when we bid.
So you're
That's
telling
why
me
we
you
were
bid
able
it
to
and
say-
it came back down to by $1.5 million.
Yes, because when we bid it, correct me if I'm remembering this wrong.
Which is
When
kind of
we
important.
bid it, we bid the non-controversial and the expanded press box. And the non-controversial was higher than we thought.
Rig or 4 million.
And so we said, well, great, the press box actually came in like $1.5 million or
No other
something
way.
lower than we thought. So we said, great,
Unless we let-
Stuart, we got a real
There.
price for the expanded press box. And so when we came for the non-controversial thing, we said, this is over budget.
There.
We
Right there.
anticipate that the press box is gonna be under
That's only
budget
3.9
because of that
Right.
balance.
So that's a year ago.
Oh, and you know what?
That's a year ago when and we had already presented this
And then
a
the
year
two roofs
before
is
that.
That is true.
We presented this presentation twice. We then bid it in September 2018. And that's where we got the reduction for the expanded press box from this number to the 1.6. This is see that range there?
I
That's
understand.
because we were
That was-
using our best guess at the time,
4 million.
but we didn't have, I didn't have my consultant's drawings, I
Didn't
didn't have my
have- didn't
structural
run out of
drawings.
Well, yeah, I know.
Everything changed in September when we actually bid it, and the bleachers were way high because of the Trump tariffs, but for whatever reason, the expanded press box wasn't all that much more. We've even since then, we looked at a 4,500 square foot option that would have only saved you about $250,000. We didn't even want to show you that one, because you
Maybe.
laughed us out of the room. So, we have been working on this for you guys,
Forever.
every chance we get.
Hence the $1 million increase.
So
in
that,
total.
that was a refresher slide, if I'm not mistaken. It was an old slide that we included in that presentation just for reference, and I guess we just didn't change that.
But we make decisions. I
Here's
mean,
the
we,
problem.
but we make decisions based upon what you give
What you
us.
give us.
I mean, you,
This was just a budget estimate from SD.
But here's
we
the
never
problem.
bid.
Whenever this happens and we go out and we're held accountable to the community, everybody's holding us accountable for a $3.4 million increase. So the number that's being hit with us on the street is $3.4 million. So when I walk back in and I see 1.6, you have to know, if you're sitting in my chair, you're asking the same questions. What is going on here? We've been emphasizing the desire for this press box for a while. How am I gonna go back to the community now and say,
Oh, it's not
okay, now
really,
we can
it's
do
this.
this?
Yeah.
And that makes me very uncomfortable. I'm sorry. It just is what it is.
So we need a good
They are-
explanation
I mean,
to be able to give to the public.
Well,
Can we perhaps-
We
let's-
do our
let's-
best to estimate these projects, and, sometimes very quickly, always very early on. And when the bids come back, that's the reality check. And $200 million, when you take all the bond scope was originally estimated for $200 million, and it came back $13 million less. So that is
And I
a
think
difference
they're doing
between estimate and bid numbers. So
We used the
that's.
same contractor Alvin used, who did a same size press box that Huckabee had designed, and used their same numbers. And yet, our design came in much less expensive, but we didn't have any way
Right.
of knowing that until we actually bid it. We just used the best information we had at the time.
And it's generally square foot cost. I mean, we're bidding off not much more than this, or we're estimating off not much more than this. So we take historical data, and there's not a lot of press boxes that compare with this as far as square foot cost. The estimates are a challenge, and I think overall on the bond, we've done pretty well. But at the bid,
So, this is my hang up, right? I always have a hang up somewhere. Right. Look, I just kind of dreamt up this $9 million, but if we go and look at the essential roofs that need to
Go
be
back to that.
done and the essential HVACs that need to be done, it's $9 million. Those are the, like do right now projects.
Do what now?
Is
What'd
that,
you
is
say?
that the total
No.
of HVAC or the total of roofs?
Nope, it's the first 11 projects for, okay, I just did 11. So it's gonna increase.
They're-
Twelve would be 3.9.
I was double counting.
Okay,
I'd
so,
like to get to the DHS boilers.
but I'm just saying, I view those as essential systems for the district, okay? And that's not even, that's just the roofs. The essential roofs, not every roof that's on the list. That's only 3.
But you're saying the 5.3 million for
Yes.
Lawn, Sab, and Cersei.
Yes, and if you look at this list, it's actually pretty frightening. This one roof, I mean, granted, they were redone. We have a roof in our district right now at Pearland Junior High West that was built in 1949. It was redone in 2006. 1953, redone 2006. 1968, redone 2004. 1982, 1971. I mean, it's pretty frightening.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at this list that I got from somebody.
That's the only times that those have been re-roofed?
No, I hope not.
I think what he's saying
It's
is
the
time frame
latest.
it takes.
It's the latest.
All those 2006 ones would have been with bond. Or would that have been?
But
I think it's just saying,
I'm just saying that
Where'd you
Where'd you get that?
I got it from Mr. Pardo.
Oh, Mr.
Okay. It'd be nice for all of us to be looking
Okay,
at the same thing.
that's,
So
Okay,
my point being
so
is,
go back to your point,
is we're
Jeff.
looking at 5.3 million for the essential roofs. It's not all. It's just 3 of these,
Right.
3 of all these, and then the HVAC systems, 4.7 million for 12 of the overall projects. Not even all of them. I mean, we're looking at over $9 million
Just for those.
just
If
for
you top
that.
12, it'd be 3.9.
We could continue to patch them. But just think of the disruption to the district when we have a chiller out or HVAC system out, right? We have maintenance and all these people that have to get involved, and it causes a disruption to the kids. That causes a disruption to the learning cycle. I mean, and I hate to bring all this stuff up, but that's the kind of stuff I think about. And we're talking about a press box, which I'm cool with. I like the bond scope press box, and I really like the full face facade that I mean, it looks fantastic. PBK did a great job on that, but
so the
I have a hard
idea
time
is
getting there.
we're trying to figure out what we do with the underrun.
So-
right?
Yeah.
So we had a project at the rig in the budget, right? So fine, that's good. So we're trying to figure out what we do with the underrun. Do we replace? Well, we got all these projects, and again, I'd like to have the detail on even the roofing, all of this stuff. Let's see what those numbers are. We have the pricing information or the estimates on the HVAC, but just to understand the number that's associated with each of these projects. So again, we're trying to figure out what to do with the underrun. You got everything from press boxes to fire alarms to you got the whole list here. So with that information, I think I'd be in a good position to come back tomorrow and attempt to come to a decision on what to do with that underrun. And I think
And that didn't include the junior high. I mean, Turner and Junior High South alarms.
the alarms too. Okay.
Is there any estimate that the Project E is going to come in under budget, like similar to the other projects?
Current estimate is that it'll be right on budget.
So we're not
Adding
playing with E.
Lawns roof?
Without Lawns roof. We also priced Silver Lake roof. We had as an alternate. That's another $1 million, but estimate says you can't do those two.
Silver Lake was.
If the GMP comes in $1 million less than the estimate, then
When do we expect the final numbers on that again?
On the roof cost.
we will present at
Just do
the
top
March
10
board
roofs.
meeting. The raw bids come back.
He went that's major top 10.
Process it and make sure.
Rebecca, I know 2 of the oversight committee members were here, and I don't know if since this is a workshop, did they have any input
Guys
or?
do you have any opinion?
I mean, we know your opinion, but I mean, since the last project has come in and we're kind of at this point, you don't have to speak.
Have you guys met again at all?
Not till this month. their meeting will be after the board meeting, so,
Oh,
Can't really,
till March.
just two of them here, so it's personal opinion, I guess.
Usually, I'm very good at figuring out what the majority might go for. I have absolutely no idea where we are, so that we can prepare accordingly for tomorrow night.
I think you just have to prepare for a maybe a little bit more robust discussion, and I don't know where the decision is going to land.
You know, I heard proposals, we were talking about security and the $4 million that we were looking at, and maybe we can cut that down depending on, you know, whether this shatterproof or shatter-resistant glass thing is going to be effective or not, considering it doesn't cover most of our windows. Is there any money that we're expecting to get from the state
Well,
for security?
Ed Thompson and others have said that safety and security is at the top, and the governor has said is at the top of the list. So I would not be surprised if each district gets some money that they are required to dedicate to safety and security. And they'll probably make that a fairly wide discretion, I think, because everybody's needs are different. There's that. And then the other thing, which is, I hate to say this is our existing system, but you all have maintained a good fund balance. A good fund balance can be used for one-time expenditures. So there is a possibility that on things where maybe Mr. Berger says, look, that hasn't gone out yet, and we think we have a little life in it, let's hold off on that, and we'll pay for that out of fund balance when Mr. Berger says you got to have it.
How many days do we have now on our fund balance?
We're over 90. I don't remember. Okay.
When is our next budget update? Is that
Well, we were hoping for March the 5th as a budget workshop, starting at 3 with the regular meeting at 5. Although Jeff cannot be here on March the 5th, that's Brazoria County Day in Austin.
You're missing budget?
Well, the meeting continues. The meeting continues.
You know, Georgina, every year Don was under from the previous year, so the expectation is that.
I'm definitely available every day up until the 5th from today on.
Charles has argued the opposite point. He wants to make sure we have an accurate number as we go forward. So.
Plus or minus what?
Yeah, and Mike makes a very good point. I mean, see, that's what makes the decision difficult, because you look at, you know, what you're going to spend on the door locks, and you think about what the state might be funding you, and you hate to spend that money.
Well, you also
On
think
that.
that you hope,
But
and I
even
know
Jeff
Mr.
has said-
Thompson has
No.
said that he would see this partially as reimbursement for things we've already done. For example, he pointed to the security vestibules and said that it's possible, but that is conjecture. It could be allowed for that, or it could say, no, it has to be all new money.
go up and
There
top
could be absolutely nothing. I mean,
Right.
to make
It's
that
a,
point.
it's a guess.
But again, these things too, I don't think, we have time to decide what you want to do with it. If you want to do the roof and the HVAC, or, you know, you don't have to decide that. But I'm
the press
going,
box and
I'm
facade,
going
right?
to put
Yeah.
the pressure on you guys. We have to decide whether or not we're going to do the rig tomorrow. That's a no-brainer. They need to know.
do we need to decide on the facade tomorrow, or just the press box?
I would think that it's going to save money to do
We
them
do
both together.
If we're gonna do it, yeah.
And you guys can do that both together and save us some money on that if we do that.
That's what you said, Jeff, right?
I see a
So-
nod from everybody but him. You nodding?
I said it today.
You look forward to an answer?
Jeff.
So I actually think
Did you see
that
soft costs
the-
just went up
this
from
decision
3.4
right
to
here-
4.2?
for tomorrow is going to be based mostly on the rig and the press box as well as the facade. And then the other things we can actually be looking at, including in our budget talks on when we want to, because we're going to have those funds. And then if we do decide on the rig, then we would have less funds and we'd have to figure out. But we don't have to figure these out right now.
Well, what's the turnaround
Right.
time for the installation of
You
the
need it
doors?
like, right, I mean,
But it'd be a good idea to have some money that's,
The rig is the only thing you have to decide now, if you're
Right.
going to change it. So
Correct.
therefore, you have to decide it.
Right.
They've drawn the big press box, they've drawn the big facade, that's all they've drawn. If you're going to go with the regular press box or the scaled back facade, they need to start drawing now, price it over the summer, and get ready to September and start construction right after.
What's the turnaround time on the security installation for the added projects that we're discussing there?
So it's similar, we'd have to design it, bid it out, bring it,
So I would argue that we also need to add security to that discussion.
I
It makes
second
no
that.
sense to me
Say that
and
again?
a bit
Makes
frustrating that
sense.
we would have a discussion about the
No, I
rig
agree.
without securing all
That
facilities.
makes
Agreed.
sense to me too.
for tomorrow? Yes, I agree.
So, with that said, let me ask administration. We have a list of security projects. And in that list, if you would give me the items, like, okay,
yeah, I have.
beyond
I
the
have it written down.
prices, right? Beyond the prices, I need to know what the security holes are. Okay, because as Mike said, the window film doesn't quite seem to be like a security hole, right? So where are the holes? We've gone a long way with hardening the
According
I
to
hate
the,
to use the word,
I'm
but
sorry,
yes, go ahead.
according to the police officers that I've talked to,
Mhm.
they highly support the doors and the film. They feel very confident about the film and the hardening of the schools as far as the film is concerned.
Okay.
So coming from the professionals who do that work, and if you guys have heard any differently about that and opinions, then I'm open to hearing those. But from what I've heard from the professionals, they are very excited about the opportunity to get this film on those windows.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think, I mean, you've got just glass right there
Mhm.
that
Screaming for
Mhm.
part of the Governor Abbott's suggestion
Mhm.
to, hardening the schools by putting that.
So that's a hole, right? So I want to, like I said, I want to know where the holes are and where we're going to be coming back, and we're putting in redundant systems. Not that redundant systems are bad, but you have, now you would have your security glass, right? Then you would have your vestibules. Then you would have your locked doors, right? The door locks, and then you would have different alarms. So I'm just trying to understand, like, where are the holes, right?
That's
Because
what we think the holes are. So we had a security committee
Mhm.
that consisted of numerous principals. We brought in our Chief Bragg, who worked for PBK.
Mhm.
We brought in Sergeant Beavers and a couple of the other police officers that you hired. We brought in several administrators, and we literally presented them with the PBK, Texas State
Mhm.
Security Coalition
Mhm.
recommendations, and the six that we presented tonight were the kind of the top six, and the three that we've priced are the three that everyone says, if we're gonna do anything
That's what
for our next level, because you gotta remember that we just did a massive security upgrade on all of your campuses.
Mhm.
The amount of cameras we just added, access control that's integrated in a lot of your campuses, security vestibules at every single one of your campuses. A lot of districts can't even say they've got all three of those boxes checked. So these are your next items. Is now we've got the inside film.
Mhm.
Let's take it to all the doors, which you get the added benefit of you're in a hurricane zone.
Mhm.
So most likely that secure film is going to be at most of your campuses. I mean, Mr. Berger, how many break-ins and windows do y'all have every year? Yeah, like
Or just busted.
security, like, very few, right? But
Mostly our grounds department breaks.
Weed eater.
so another advantage, weed eaters are going to
Stop breaking windows. Yeah, and so
and so that's what we look at, is that are there additional benefits other than the one-off random kid trying to break in and steal a computer? And so that's a definite additional benefit to the film. The being able to know that your classroom is locked. Regardless of an active shooter incident, which is a very isolated incident, nice for teachers to just know, my door's locked. And being able, whenever we have drills and integrating that with your students. And so that's like the number one recommendation that we've heard from the Columbine shooting and from, the St. Hip shootings, is being able to lock your doors is the best thing you do. The advantage there is you've got numerous campuses that have aging hardware. They're just older. Shady Crest still has the knobs, and so we'll be upgrading that hardware at the same time. So you get a residual benefit with that as well, is that you get, all new locks that are a constant maintenance problem.
And that's every single door, every single classroom, every single campus.
Student occupied space.
Every student occupied space.
And
The
what was that
exact same.
ballpark
Okay.
number again? Was it 1.4 or was it?
It was 1.4 for the
yeah.
locks and
1.4
600,000 for the glass.
Yeah, I agree with the locks. I'm going to push back on the film because, I mean, you have more window space that's not going to be filmed than you do.
Then let's add more film.
You could add that.
But some
Well,
of
yeah,
that
if you
in
wanna do that.
classrooms is because of egress. All of our windows in the classrooms do not open, and if an active shooter comes in, some of the training is to get out. And in order to break that window, if the film is there, they're preventing the people in the classroom from getting out.
No, I'm sure. I 100% agree with you, right? I mean, that way, I mean,
Mr.
but
Berger,
the concern would be, right, I mean, hurricane, it's more likely that a hurricane would smash a classroom window than a small, just the proportion of space.
May I
is
finish
more.
with one more thing? Thank you so much. And, okay, since these top three here are the top three, excuse me, since these three here are the top three, would you go over one more time the additional lockdown buttons and what that function is?
So right now, if we were in a situation, we get on accounts that
Mhm.
there's lockdown. This would give anybody the capability, a student or staff, to push a button like a fire alarm system.
A student.
And so how many of those would you have around the campus and where would they be
So they would
located?
be strategically located,
Okay.
Like fire.
But he's saying 300 divided by 23 campuses is how many buttons we'd have.
So you have, 300 total, right? And then you, across 23 campuses, okay.
And then also, we're looking at the ability that once that one of those buttons is hit, it could tie in with a computer
He said,
system
okay.
and send out mass communication in lots of different ways, text, emails, calls, and right people to police.
How do you monitor it if it's, I mean,
The local alarm, so as soon as you lift it, it sounds an alarm and everyone looks at that area, so to prevent nuisance alarms. Very similar to how your fire alarms are now.
And there's well, I guess that's.
Cameras, generally, those areas are covered by cameras, because
But
those
you
are
don't have
all in the
we asked
hallways.
Mr. Berger about this whenever we were doing the recommendations, and you don't have a whole lot of kids pulling the fire alarm. And if you're gonna push a button that would have everyone go to their classroom, or you're gonna pull a button.
but you guys were talking about having access on your phone and that anybody can push it.
Well, not-
Students,
not
I mean, that's what
everybody.
was just stated,
No.
so I'm just like,
Teachers on their phone or.
Okay.
And the disciplinary punishment for pulling that
There will
alarm
be
is
the
severe
novelty of it
already.
when it's installed and people are.
oh, of course.
But
Just like
just-
fire alarms, it
Yes.
dissipates.
Jeff's point is they're more likely to pull a fire alarm to create chaos.
That's a lot
rather
different than pulling an
lock-
alarm for.
Lockdown button, you can send everyone to their classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the fun in that?
Oh, that's true.
Sean, I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me get that last question out.
Yep.
Your time to me now. Okay.
yield to the
I just wanted to know,
gentleman
Mr.
from
Berger,
Pearland.
again, can you break down that cost for fire alarm? I have 500,000 for Turner written down, or in Cersei. The remaining part of that
500,000 was from I do not know the bond number.
Turner and junior high south.
for so that part of the
445,000.
Turner and South together was 445.
We're going to get all this.
Okay.
You're going to send us all this data, though.
I will, yes.
Yeah, so-
That's the estimate we got from a contractor, 445,705 to do those. And I rounded that up to 500.
Okay, so that's where I got
Figuring maintenance would
500.
do that, but let's put a little contingency.
And Cersei was
1.2 million.
1.2.
No.
And
Yeah,
1.2
PHS and Cersei was
million.
1.2 million.
And that's an early estimate from a contractor.
And on these locks, they're replacing the handle and the,
And whole assembly gets changed, yes.
so the handles, they're one unit right now, you can't, I'm just masking.
Oh, it's called a lock set, so that whole, both sides, all that silver gets.
So what are most of the high schools and junior highs, and what are they using right now? And what's on the inside?
It's just a little key. You don't know if it's locked or not. You have to,
But it's a turn,
there's di-
you can tell it turns to the right and it locks, right? Go ahead.
You gotta
They don't all
find
have
your
the thumb
key.
switch.
Huh?
They don't all have the thumb switch.
Okay.
none of them have it.
So you have to go out in the hallway and lock it. And that's part of the issue. If you're doing an active shooter or a lockdown, they gotta go in the hallway to lock their door.
But some of them, like a PHS,
To check
they have
that
a
it's
thumb
locked.
deal, right?
Yeah, some of them. A lot of them now, like in your elementaries, they use that magnet, but even that, you gotta go to the door, open the door, and swipe the magnet out.
So essentially, we can replace in phases, right? We can replace the ones that are, hey, you have to go outside, right?
No, all of them.
All of them.
I mean, you gonna choose your kid or my kid to be safe?
Oh, wait, he was talking
we
about
can't do all
doing
of
it, you were talking about doing it in
Excuse
phases?
me, excuse me, Crystal?
You're right, Lance. I know
Me,
that's not
really?
your tip, but it's, why not phase them all in at one time? I apologize. You're right.
What I'm saying
Well,
is,
it's a massive
I
project.
was a teacher,
There is
I was a teacher, and in my classroom, I had a thumb switch, and I could lock my door, and when I turned it to the right, I knew it was locked. When I turned it to the left, I knew it was unlocked. I'm just saying, if we wanted to do things in phases, we would definitely take, the ones that have to go outside first. I'm trying to look at it.
But some of that is also training, if you're gonna train the district on notification that that red light or that whatever is the indicator,
Gotcha.
shows me it's locked, that's what you wanna train.
Okay,
You
but you,
don't wanna give them too many options.
I got
Depending on what room I'm in.
okay.
Okay, so I think that your marching orders, sir, is to, the information that Charles was requesting was the breakdown of the costs on the projects, okay?
Get that tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
All right, but what I'm taxing you guys, as my board members, I would like for you to really know that we're gonna come in, and I'm going to ask for a vote on the rig and the rig facade tomorrow, okay? The rest of this, as I see it, absolutely, I'd like to do, we can have these conversations, and I know that is based on what you guys decide on this, the rig and the press box, the press box and the facade. But I also think that we can put that into our budget talks, which are coming up next month,
March 6th.
March 6th, as Jeff would hope.
See what the big deal
Okay.
is one day.
And
Maybe
Crystal,
Larry
Crystal
Taylor,
had said,
Ed Thompson,
maybe
Dan Huberty,
even including
great FaceTime.
the security things as soon as tomorrow as well. That's something that we can discuss if we can get that information.
I'm trying to think if it would be helpful to the board that based on all this discussion tonight, we go a step further than the detail and then come up with a prioritized list of all this combined together where there were certain things we discussed tonight that I think it sounded like everybody understands we got to do. So maybe just take our own swipe from the administration's point of view of these are the ones that look like everybody agrees got to do, and then at least that gives them a basis for going from there.
I think that would be really helpful. Some direction, guidance from administration would be welcomed.
In other words, more detail than, for instance, he would like to know the difference between doing the PA system, or not the PA, but the fire alarm at Junior High South and the other place. So those two items are part of the list and they're prioritized in with the rest.
Dr. Kelly, like I say, the 3 roofs would be prioritized. We've got the HVAC that's prioritized. We could prioritize the 3 security projects. We could prioritize the 2 fire alarm projects, and then we've got
Yeah.
athletics stuff.
And some of that you've already done. For example, as Larry pointed out,
You can
cut
you
it
can go
off
down
at
all the way
item
to
number
12.
12 or.
Item 12,
DHS boilers.
DHS boiler.
In
And
my
you could do
mind,
that with
what
the
I
roofs
hear you
too.
saying, and
You
what
could
I'm
prioritize the
interpreting that
roof
kind of as an
project.
end result,
And
is that
then-
we would have all of these projects together on one
One
list
paper.
Yes.
entirely.
Yes, that's what I'm looking
That
at.
says Lawhon roof has to be done.
Right.
Security is a priority,
Right.
what those numbers
Right.
would be.
And then
from
you decide
administration.
whether within that big long list you can fit the rig in, the additional cost, or you can't.
I like it.
Yep.
Now saying maybe try to all
Yes,
Yes,
60 projects now.
yes.
one list.
To the degree we can, yes. Now, of course,
Do
the
that by
rig and the
tomorrow.
facade sit outside of that, because they're basically contingent upon how much of that
I don't
they,
think we can, I mean, the three things that I heard that I was just chalking down that sounded like y'all were on page with was lawn, roof, the doors, and the Turner Junior High fire alarm system. Those were kind of the only three I heard.
well, then we'll put them near the top. But that's our job between now and tomorrow.
But these are very these are very disparate
Look,
things.
No matter what list we come up with, it's gonna be another 2-hour discussion, but
I'm really
We'll
hoping
give
that it's
them
not gonna
some-
be another 2-hour discussion.
we'll
That's why
give
we
them
have it tonight.
something to
Give you our
work from.
opinion.
I mean, I think it may be difficult to take 70 projects and try to rank them. It could even make matters worse.
Respectfully, you guys have more education in these areas and know the facilities much better than we do
Right.
sitting here. And you're
Is
gonna
it-
get
is
a
it a-
much worse result with us trying to pick apart
We're
those
not,
things.
we're not
than-
gonna, we're not gonna get close to 70 projects. I mean, once we get, I mean.
They're not
1.2,
70, but
Well,
You know,
well, if you,
1.4.
Well, Mr. Berger's 17 are already done, so you, it's,
Yeah, exactly.
he's,
Yeah,
he's good to
17
go.
It's gonna, that 9 point,
But the
the
1 million,
13.6 is gonna go.
there's about 20 projects in the 1 million principles.
Yeah, just, I wouldn't touch that.
I
the
wouldn't,
Charles
I wouldn't, no.
would
If
so
we had a
that-
10-year
that's something
capital
we can do,
improvement plan, we
for
could just
those-
spit those off right off the bat.
So I'm not sure how I would
already
prioritize the
ranked,
press
yeah.
box versus the roof.
Yeah.
Well,
If you want our
The,
opinion.
the ones that we know we have to do will be up at the top. The rig and the
No, we're not doing
facade
that
are not
I mean,
obviously
honestly.
things we have to do.
I think frankly what
Why-
Krista
But I'm
was
not
saying.
worried
and-
about
and that's what
those.
Don's
I'm
saying.
worried
Why are we
about
gonna go
the
rank this
ones,
stuff?
just
It's
trying to
not-
get
I
to a
mean-
list of the board says we have got
I'll
to
bring
have
it up.
these within the bond.
Right, and frankly, what Chris was saying is true. So that you guys come up with a list, or we come up with a list, and
I think that you guys have more of the
Dr. Kelly-
knowledge based on that.
Okay.
Can I say that
That'll
what
be
Mr.
okay.
Tillis was, the point he was making, I don't know how many people heard this, in my opinion, my only opinion is true. When you look at the $1 million and other projects, and he's saying there's, 70 of those there,
You don't have to.
I think as a board, I would say, not speaking for everyone, that those probably aren't a priority for the spending that we're talking about.
Right.
The intercom, the gym, carpet, sound system, as the other ones are. So I don't know how much time you would want them
No,
spending
I
on
would agree- I would
prioritizing
agree with
that.
70
We're
items.
focused- we're
But that's
focused on
helpful.
The absolute must-dos.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Must do.
Right.
In that line
It's a
item,
list of 5 or 6 things.
Yeah.
that you were saying that those projects right there were $1 million total.
And you
Okay.
just mentioned within that, there's like 70.
Yeah, you don't need those.
There's a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Not a single one of them is an emergency.
Yeah,
No.
but they're good.
Well, we'll take a
ideas.
look, make sure that none
Like
of those
the-
are emergencies.
Those sound systems, like sound system in the Dawson competition gym, at floor, all that stuff needs to be done. But yeah, is it bond? Is it right now? Probably
You
not.
stay tonight till midnight, Don? Or is that?
But if you just take, like I think Mr. Barry already pointed out, if you take the 1.2 lawn roof, which
Right.
I'm telling you,
Yes.
We are
it's
doing.
gotta be done.
Okay.
If you take the HVAC to number 12, and it's 3.9, you take the security projects at 4 million, and in that, you could pull out the parallel one if you got too budgety or whatever, but if you just take the whole 4 million, and then you take the 1.6 and 2.7, you're at your number.
You're no, right there.
That's kind of where I'm at in my
That's-
head.
That
We're at your 13.6.
That's actually what I see.
Yeah.
That's what I wrote down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's what
And
I
then
see.
you
even
decide.
within the security thing, there's
No room, no wiggle room.
$1 million wiggle room
But
there.
understood. I like it.
All right, are
And
we,
Write that down.
Because we get what we need.
I wrote it down, I'll characterize it that way.
So he
We'll
said
put
take
those to the top.
And
HVAC
you're
to
telling me
12.
that SAB and CRC are not in roof failure.
No, they're not. What
But
they are
where-
is they're a gravel built-up roof, and we're trying to get rid of all of those because they're the only ones in the district. So they're not at a failure point, but they're in timeline, they're getting there, and in the quality of the roof that they are, the material, we want to get rid of them.
So it's sort of like the PHS fire system. Like, it's
Yeah.
not ideal that we have these in this nature, but it's functioning and our students are safe and
And we do
we're not
roof
gonna have
repairs,
roof cave-ins
you know,
and.
With our Hawk Roofing vendor, we just did $1,200 roof repair, I mean, it's patching. But lawn is beyond patching. You go stand on lawn with high heel shoes, you're gonna sink.
He's trying. Okay. Good? Everybody good? All right. So a adjourning at 7:19.
Burger.